Today's video is brought to you by the letter F. The letter F is found in the word failure. We're going to talk about a real big mistake that I made, because we don't talk about that enough. So I try to be really transparent in these videos about the process of me learning and trying to figure things out as I go. As I have said before, I am not a professional sewer. I learned from my grandmother, who was a very, very talented seamstress. She taught me everything that I know. And unfortunately, I'm finding myself in the middle of all of these major projects, and I'm wishing that she could tell me what to do to fix these, because I am running into problem areas in these projects that I am not equipped to handle and figure out, and I don't have the technical skills and the technical knowledge to work around them, or also not get myself into them in the first place. So this past week I was working on my costume. I mentioned in the dragon video that at a certain point with the puppet, I had to put it down and walk away because I was getting so frustrated that I just couldn't go on, and it was past the point of being productive. I was just so done with it that I was just ready to throw the entire thing away. And so instead of putting the sewing machine away for a week and just giving it a break and walking away and not touching the crafting stuff, I instead decided to move on to a different part of my costume. I had decided this year that I was going to wear everything entirely handmade for the Renaissance Fair. Disclaimer, you don't have to make all your own garb. It is totally cool if you go and thrift stuff, if you buy stuff off of the internet. You don't even have to dress up for the Renaissance Fair. This is just a me thing. I got really caught up in, I'm going to make every single aspect of everything that I'm wearing this year, and that's going to be the thing, and it's going to be cool, and I absolutely have the skill set to do this. I do not. So I attempted to make pants. I have never made pants before. I have made pants for a stop motion puppet, but those were not pants that had to fit a real person and a plus size person at that. So I'm gonna get the laughter out of the way real quick. These are folded in half. This is the pants mistake. They were supposed to be kind of like breeches. It was another pattern that was supposed to be a lot of rectangles that just went together and it became clothing. And I thought that I could do that because I've done so well with the pirate shirt peasant top thing that I've done several times before, and my brain has made me forget the struggles that I went through the first time I made that peasant shirt, and that was just magnified by 10,000 trying to make pants, because pants are hard. So yeah, I'm going to take you through where everything went wrong, and I have no intention of fixing these. These are going to get torn up and repurposed into another costume piece or another craft or something, but we're going to go through the steps of what went wrong and how hypothetically one could salvage this. I don't intend to do so this is just going to be a fun thought experiment. A little history lesson before I get into this. As I mentioned, my grandmother was an excellent seamstress. She taught me everything that I know. She started me on a sewing machine at a very young age, and that was the thing that we did together. So sewing and crafting for me is a very special thing, because not only do I love it and I love making things and being able to wear and use the things that I make, it also keeps me very close to my grandmother, who I miss dearly. Not gonna cry, I already did that. And so in doing these projects where I feel like I'm coming up against these problems, it's very difficult for me, because it kind of feels like, why can't I do this? I should know how to do this, because my grandmother would be able to knock this out in an hour and would never have this problem, even though I know that's not true. And it also just, it kind of sucks that I can't call her up and be like, hey, how do I fix this? Or even better, can you fix this for me? So it's very hard for me to admit when something doesn't work because I'm very much of the mind that it's going to work and I'm going to make it work and it's going to look the way it's going to look and it's going to be fine. So this is one of the first projects that I've done that I've had to fully say, like, there's no fixing this. It's just not going to happen. So yeah, I have been bested by pants, but this will not be the last time that I try to make pants, and we're going to figure out together what I did wrong. All right. My first folly that I'm identifying in this whole kerfuffle with the pants. I am not quiet about the fact that I am a very large individual. Therefore, it is quite difficult for me to find patterns that work for me. That's why I end up drafting a lot of my own patterns and having to figure out my own sizing for a lot of things because things do not fit me. Even in normal life, I have quite a difficult time finding things that fit the way that I would like them to fit, and things that look the way that I would like them to look. And so my first mistake when embarking on this project, and this was something that I experienced when I started doing the peasant shirts and the pirate shirt type pattern, is that yes, it is all rectangles. However, those measurements are going to be different if you got a belly, because I am also tall in addition to being a fat person. So just straight up, my measurements weren't right. I knew that I was working with a limited amount of fabric because this is recycled material. This was pulled from the very large skirt of an old theater costume that I got donated from an old children's theater, and I like the fabric, and usually that is enough for one of those pirate shirts. However, I did not take into account just how much fabric I was going to need for this project, because it didn't compute in my brain that I was going to have to add a couple extra inches of height to cover my belly. That was the big problem. These parts right here are the legs. I didn't have any problem with that. The measurements were fine. However, when we get to the actual pants part, the point of this pattern is it was supposed to be large and then gather in at the waist. And so you can't really see it the way that I'm standing. When I hold these to my body, it hits where I want it to hit and it goes down. However, I did not take into account that whenever I was actually putting the pants together, that length was going to have to go over and cover my belly up to here. And so that is a couple extra inches that I did not account for whenever I was cutting out my pattern pieces. And I was already strapped for fabric whenever I was putting this together because I'm a tall individual. So that is my first mistake, and this is no hate to the person that I got the pattern from, this is things that straight size people don't think about. I didn't take into account my own body shape, even though I know that I usually have to adjust those kind of patterns for myself to get them to fit. So that was the biggest thing, is I went in with half a plan. I did not account for the measurements that I knew should have been altered for my body type, and I set myself up for failure when I didn't have enough fabric to begin with. If I wanted to start this project, I needed to actually take my measurements, go and buy the yardage of fabric that I needed in the first place without trying to jam this half-formed plan onto recycled fabric that I did not have enough of. Another problem that I ran into with this project, and this has less to do with the actual fit and more to do with what would have been the final aesthetics. I picked a pattern fabric for this because it's what I have on hand. I should not have done that. I would recommend trying to start with fabric that is all one color, one kind, because it's really hard to pattern match if you're already flying by the seat of your pants. So I know just aesthetically from the beginning, the pattern for this didn't really match whenever I was putting it together, and I do want things to work. However, there are things that set handmade garments that look well made apart from things that look like you obviously whipped them up in your basement. Now, there's no hate to anyone that's making anything. There are different degrees of what people standardize as like what looks homemade. However, it's just my preference. I should not have done this with a pattern fabric that would not match, because I'm realizing now as I'm looking it over, and I wasn't even thinking about this whenever I was in the middle of sobbing and trying to sew this together and make it work, that the fabric just didn't match, and also my thread didn't match. This is red and I have black seams all over this, which you can't see from the camera. However, up close, if you were to go through and look, and I can show you, like my gather stitch that's right here, as I knock my camera over, you can see the thread, the black thread up close in that gather stitch, and there are a couple other seams on here that are stark black thread against red fabric. Stark black thread against red fabric. That is a tongue twister. So yeah, next time I do this, or if I were to ever attempt something like this again, I would not start off with trying to use pattern fabric. Moving forward, as I said before, this mess is going to be torn apart and repurposed and used for a different garment. I already have plans for using this for some of the paneling when I do my, I don't know what to call it, stays, corset, overdress, vest thingy. It's not a corset, it's not going to have boning. It may have zip ties, but I don't know. I'm going to repurpose this as fabric for that. So that will be various panels on the outer facing layer, as well as most of my inner layer lining is probably going to be made out of this fabric, because I have an abundance of it, despite the fact that it cannot be successfully turned into pants. I am also trying to make note of all of the things that I did right in this project. It's really kind of hard because this was ultimately a very big failure. This is not a wearable garment. This is not anything that I can salvage, but I am trying to take note of the fact that my gathers are starting to get better and more consistent. I showed those, and that's a skill that you develop over time, of getting that thread tension where you need it to be and getting those pulls even and uniform, and I have noticed that I am getting better at that. I am getting better at estimating some measurements, some others not, but I did get these right, and I did get, like, this would have gathered correctly had the inseam been the correct height. So I did get that. I am also just working on getting better at accepting that some things can't just be fixed by running it through the sewing machine repeatedly until it works, because some things just aren't going to work, and that's okay. I'm working on that last part. So in summary, I know nothing actually got completed in this video. However, we did learn something from the something not getting completed, and that is a good thing. So don't be afraid to just completely mess up the project that you're working on. And it's completely fine if you're using things like, I'm really lucky that this was donated fabric, so this was free. This would have ended up in the trash or in a landfill had I not turned it into failed pants. So we saved the failed pants from the landfill, and it's still going to be repurposed. So don't be afraid to fuck it up. I'm going to have to bleep that, but the sentiment is the same. Don't be afraid to mess it up, because you can either fix it or you can learn from it, and you can repurpose it always. So go craft and go make a mistake, or better yet, go craft and make something very cool.